Before dawn, the candles around the bier had guttered into cups of amber wax, and the chill that lived in the stones of the great September had crept up from the flagstones and gnawed through silk and velvet as if both were nothing. Cersei stood so near to the dead boy's face that the heat of each candle drew a thin, trembling line on her skin, as if fire itself were trying to teach her to remember. When the flames moved, shadows shifted in Joffrey's hair, and for an instant the funeral oils gave it back the luster of a living boy. Then the light changed again, and he was only a still shape guarded by candelabra and guardsmen, watched by the stone faces of the seven and their fixed compassion. She had been told the oils were scented, myrrh and something that always reminded her of the arborist's gardens in the Reach, but there was a sharper tang beneath the perfume, a clean black bite of smoke, faint as the memory of battlefield fires. There were always other smells, once a scent had time to settle. The wool of the silent sisters' habits, the iron of the braziers, the ghost of old incense that lived deep in the carved ribs of the sept as if the stone itself had learned prayer. She adjusted the fold of her mourning veil with careful fingers, because her hands would not be still otherwise. The veil softened the light and the world was easier to bear through it. She had sent the retainers away hours ago, and now only the night and the candles and the thin, soft steps of the sisters moved in and out of hearing. Her throat ached the way it did when one swallowed past a shard of ice. The ache had lasted since the cup fell, since Joffrey clawed wordlessly, since they pried the crystals from his lips. There was a part of her that still lived in those moments. As a limb might dream it could still open and close the hand after it had been severed. In that other time, she could still do any of 1,000 things. Take the cup, strike the dwarf, rip out Margaery's hairpin and open her throat. The time in which she had failed to do any of those things had hardened into the morning light when nothing moved. She had cried where no one saw her and spat vows into the surfaces of mirrors and made lists of enemies that grew like ivy in her head until her skull was a wall of green. And then the lists dissolved, and all she could see was Tommen's face turned up to her, smooth and young and trusting. There was a terrible simplicity in that face, a terrible clarity. She saw, with the sudden sharpness that comes after a blade slips, the shape of every choice that could ruin him. She counted the steps that lead towards ruin, and they were all familiar steps. Much later, when the sky over the sept's high windows was a gray softening and the candles had begun to lean and spit, the doors thudded softly, and her father's measured tread came down the aisle between the rows of candles. Tywin Lannister had never needed ceremonial. He brought his own. He did not pause to nod to the seven as she did not. They met at the bier, and he looked down at the face of his grandson for the space of 2 breaths. The hard planes of his face did not change, but his jaw clenched once, so briefly that a stranger would not have seen. Cersei remembered being a girl and watching that jaw move when her mother died, and how she had pressed her nails into her palms until they drew little sickle moons of blood, because if she had any part in her father's steel, she wanted it to be in her hands and not in her face. She remembered how he had kissed her hair and led her back to the rock, and for a time there had been the illusion of a world that could be arranged by will alone. Tywin took one of the candles, turning it slightly, so its light fell more cleanly across Joffrey's cheekbones. "The city will wake," he said, not looking at her. His voice was even. A man might think he was asking for a ledger. "When it does, we will give it certainty. The boy will be king by sundown." She kept her eyes on the small crease at the corner of Joffrey's mouth that the oils had failed to smooth. "The boy," she said. It helped to say the words she must say. "Tommen will be king." The syllables were careful and quiet, set down side by side like paving stones laid for the path she would walk. Tywin let out a breath, not a sigh, only a measured exhalation. "We cannot afford a vacuum. There will be grief and displays of it, as there should be. Nothing in this world quiets fools like order. Margaery will be persuaded of the necessity of continuity." He set the candle back in its place. "You will support the marriage." Cersei thought of Margaery's hands cupping the golden cup, laughing, moving through the hall like a bright fish through clear water. All eyes turned toward her. She thought of Margaery's grandmother watching from behind her lace fan as if it were a little net. Cersei had kept her loathing honed, a good small knife, always within reach. She had expected to draw it now. She had rehearsed the words, not while I live," and rehearsed the delightful future in which the little rose would be plucked, its stem snapped, its petals scattered like scraps of meat for small birds. All of that lay waiting in her, the clean lines of a violence she had long cared for. It was almost a relief to feel again the heat of it, to know she could strike and feel the world move under the blow. Then Tommen's face rose again, and Ser Pounce's whiskers brushed his little chin, and Tommen laughed because cats made sense to him when kingship did not, and Cersei felt the knife leave her hand. "We will support it," she said. The words were as dry as salt and just as necessary. Her father's head turned a fraction, enough to see her fully. She did not flinch. Tommen needs the city's love as much as its obedience. He is gentle. They will read gentleness as weakness unless it is housed in affection. The Tyrells bring wheat and song. I will not strip him of both. She swallowed. I will not make war inside his house. There was the smallest silence. Tywin's eyes were coins you could not see the bottom of. Good, he said finally, a single syllable shaved clean of surprise. You will remain as Queen Regent until Tommen's majority. That will be in writing this afternoon. There will be no talk of you on the rock. The boy needs you here. It was a compromise, and he did not say it as if it were one. She inclined her head. She had won something and lost something else, and she felt the shape of both. And the dwarf. Tywin's mouth flattened. He did not look at her. He will be tried, as if the word were a chisel. She felt her throat narrow. Tried, she repeated. And condemned. We do not know that. It was almost absurd to hear him say it, to hear that one phrase of restraint fall from a man whose life had been a vault. She stared at the candlelight in his eyes and was suddenly tired, so tired she thought she might fold, might sit down on the step like a serving girl whose knees had given way. She thought of Tyrion's laughter rolling across tables and of the way it set her teeth on edge, of his little clever mouth and the iron edges of his wit. She thought of Joanna's eyes, which the dwarf had in full, and that it would be a simple thing to kill a face that belonged to the only woman Tywin had loved. It had always been a simple thing in her mind. She did not know why it was different now, except that Tommen was in the middle of everything like a small candle in a night wind, and she could see the draft coming from 100 doors blown open. She had watched cities fall in her father's stories and had always liked the part where the doors break and the flood comes and the enemies drown. She had never considered that sometimes the flood came in because the door had failed on its own hinges. Call it exile, she said. Call it the wall. Call it a chain if you like. Call it mercy if you need your courtiers to sigh. Tasted like bile to say it. She said it anyway. He cannot be here, but I am done turning the court into a gallows. It wastes more blood than it drinks. Tywin's gaze grew still, and for a heartbeat she felt the little scrape against her skin that meant she had surprised him. It was not a bad feeling. The wall, he repeated, weighing it. The word had its own cool air. Oberyn will want a spectacle. He came here for one. Another exhalation, his mouth a thin line, the measured acceptance of fact. He will not have it. If we take a quieter road, we keep Dorne. If I must barter, I will find another gift for the Prince of Dorne. She followed the line of his thought and knew where it led. She had dreamed of the mountain dying in a dozen ways that wintered in her head like wolves, but the mountain belonged to her father. Gregor, she said. If he is called for trial, Tywin said lightly, as if commenting on the weather, he will be too ill to attend. There are a number of men in the city who could be called Gregor if one speaks softly enough when one speaks the name. He looked at her again with full attention. You do not need to be told what to do with your face in public, but I will say it anyway. We honor the fallen king. We do not howl. Cersei looked down at Joffrey's face, and the creamy sheen of the oils brushed the bones into something more familiar. She did not touch him. Touch would tell the truth of it. The coolness and the weight and the small ways death disrespects hands. I do not howl, she said. I never have. It wasn't honest exactly, but it did not have to be. She breathed in the sharpness of candle smoke and let it clean the edges inside her. Olenna will come to offer condolences. She always harvests when others are distracted. I will let her gather her petty fruits. Let her. The slightest curl of contempt moved at the corner of Tywin's mouth. If a woman wants to manage her orchard, we do not burn the trees. We prune them. He adjusted his glove, fingers moving one by one, an old habit he always fell into when he had decided a course and would not alter it. I will send for the master of coin. We will wake the Iron Bank. We will starve anyone who finds ambition a more interesting breakfast than bread. Have Pycelle draft the letters to the lords of the Reach and the Crownlands. And Cersei. He paused, and the pause had the texture of sincerity, strange and plain. You did well. The words struck her ribs in a strange way. She had spent her life trying to earn them and hating the man who could give them. She inclined her head and did not smile, not because she wished to hide the pleasure, but because even her muscles seemed unwilling to dishonor the dead boy with the movement. When her father turned and went back down the long aisle, the shadows of the candles trembled across the tiles in his wake like many small banners furled and unfurled on the same invisible wind. She stood alone a little longer. She told Joffrey things she would not say aloud, only the simple words a mother uses to a baby in its cradle. Sleep now, rest, be quiet, because she had nothing else that did not feel like sand in her mouth. When she finally left, the veil made the brightness of the corridor manageable. A little later, the day would bloom into its full ugliness, and she would step into it as a queen steps into a choked courtyard and still expects the crowd to part. The walk down to her chambers past tapestries she had grown up admiring for their sly flattery of Lannister history. Lions defending shepherds they never noticed, golden embroidery catching the cruel light as if it possessed it. The servants bowed, some with fear like a draft behind their eyes, some with pity their faces had not yet learned to hide. She let their gazes fall through her as if she were only glass. In the quiet of her rooms the smell changed. Here there were roses, and the last smoke of snuffed candlewicks, and the faint musk of a cat who came and went with royal impunity, leaving strands of pale fur caught on brocade as quietly as snow settles. Tommen had given permission to be led away hours ago. Permission, she had told his nurse, not order, because he needed to hear himself say he had choices. Now he slept. The nurse had whispered by the door, and the boy's mouth looked as it did when he was a baby, soft and rounded, as if it still expected milk. Cersei stood a moment at the lintel and looked in. She could see the outline of her son beneath the blankets, the small rise and fall, and a shape that lifted its head and blinked and lowered it again near the pillow. Ser Pounce turned in that boneless way cats turn, making himself into a single ribbon of motion, and his tail was an idle question mark at the very edge of the coverlet. The sight steadied her. She did not wake Tommen. Love was a guard whose strength was in foresight, not noise. When she turned away, Varys was waiting where he knew he could be seen. The spider never materialized so suddenly that it seemed uncanny, and he never came so slowly that it felt like surveillance. He arranged himself near a window with the same care he took with his courtesies. For a moment, they regarded each other, and Cersei let him have the silence, because silence was a story too, one that told him she had time to spend, or at least that she would make him earn her impatience. "Your Grace," he said and bowed, and the little round hands were the essence of humble. "The city breathes because you stand. It will rest easier to hear that the succession will proceed without delay. I have already heard the first of a dozen versions of the tragedy, each one poured into a different cup." He tilted his head, as if listening to a sound only he could hear. "You will be pleased to know that the loudest voices favor poison, not curse, and blame within the pitiful range of imagination afforded to men who have never met a true magician." "Tyrion," she said. The name was a pebble flicked at a wall. She watched the ripples it made in Varys's expression, faint and telling. "He is favored by those who cannot afford to be surprised by their own ideas." Varys folded his hands, one by one. She wondered if he had learned that from her father or if all men who built empires inside their heads found the same little rituals. "I will assist the hand in seeing that the trial does not become theater. As if you dislike theater." She moved past him and poured wine with measured gestures. She did not drink. She let the glass stand as symbol, fecund, untouched. You will also see that the Tyrells feel nothing from us today but gratitude and necessity. You can whisper in their hallways, I am told. Suppose you do so for me and not for your own quiet empire. Varys bowed with his eyelids as well as his head. He used his whole face for agreement. I am not so proud of my whispers that I would deny their usefulness to those who keep me alive. She watched him consider her as he might consider a new piece on the board, carved beautifully and weighted differently than before. She could almost taste his curiosity at this version of Cersei, a woman who did not immediately demand a head on a spike. He would take his questions elsewhere, to see if a turned stone revealed a snake. Good. Let him see what it cost her to be still. There was a certain fortune in being underestimated by those who knew you too well. They were laziest in their imagination. Find me a way to speak to Oberyn without walls, she said. A garden, perhaps, where he can pretend to admire my roses while telling me what he wants. No music. It interferes. Bring him when the light is kind. Nothing that looks like theater. I shall set the stage with care, Varys said and smiled, and corrected himself immediately. Forgive the metaphor. Sometimes everything is a stage when one has to move chairs. And Varys, she said as he bowed himself out, the next time you open your little ears for stories about poison, remember that the truth will matter less than what keeps the city whole. She let him have the word whole because it would suggest kindness, and his mind would run in circles around it while she did other work. When he had gone, she sat at her table and wrote with a steady hand. Paper said things differently than mouths. It took heat poorly and made a mess when one's temper spilled. She wrote to Doran Martell in a measured, almost austere hand, offering him courtesies more than condolences, and courtesies that were chairs for something to sit on rather than cushions to suffocate upon. She wrote that the king would mourn his brother-in-law's grief as if it were his own, that the city's kitchens would be opened on the day of coronation to any Dornishman who had business in King's Landing, that Tommen would hear petitions from their envoys, that no man named Gregor would be knighted in the city while there were questions in the air. She did not promise justice. She promised attention. It was almost the same thing to those who wanted to be seen doing the choosing. She wrote to Paxter Redwine with a little grace that she borrowed from the Reach and set a bowl down for him to place his pride into should he need to empty his hands. She wrote to the Master of Coin with particular arithmetic that her father would approve, which was really the only arithmetic she trusted. She wrote to the Baker's Hall offering them a gift of flour and lessened tariffs on yeast for a month in return for bread presented in the king's name on the day of the funeral. It was a dull letter to write and exactly the letter that mattered. She had no desire to feed famished children with her own hands. She wished never to see their faces. But she would feed them, and they would believe it was Tommen who had thought of it, and the city would tell stories in the language of hunger. When the maid came to light the chamber candles against the gray of morning, Cersei sent for Tommen's septa and for the seams tray. Seize. There would be clothing for mourning that did not strangle the boy in black. There would be garments that allowed him to be a child seen in mourning and not a little statue draped like an effigy. She wrote a note for Marjorie as well, careful and exquisite, expressing a mother's thanks for the girl's public composure, and inviting her to walk together in the gardens at sunset when the heat was down. The language of invitation mattered. She was not summoned. She was asked. It was the difference between a corridor and a room. You breathed differently in each. Near noon, Tywin called the council. The table had been polished to an unnatural sheen. She could see the ribs of the wood beneath the lacquer and think of bone under skin. Mace Tyrell occupied his seat as if it were a well-fed horse he had been told not to ride too fast. Pycelle breathed, and every third breath came with a little noise. Qyburn, who had been given standing by being told not to speak, stood as if his tongue were a sovereign on a scale and he had to weigh it every moment. Varys had the air of someone who already knew the outcome of the meeting and was gratified to see how neatly the actors hit their marks. Jaime leaned a fraction on his sound hip, the gold of his false hand bright enough to be ceremonial and shameful and proud all at once. Tywin began with orders, he ended with orders. Between, he permitted advice to be spoken, and once or twice he asked for it. Cersei watched the men watch each other. She spoke when it mattered and found her words taken down by the air as if it were a ledger. She saw Mace Tyrell's gratitude expand like a pastry when Tywin announced the coronation would proceed with the Reach's singers and flowers and bread. She saw the way his eyes slid to his mother's chair, empty now, and the way his mouth tightened at the edges. Olenna had not come. Of course she had not. She would arrive when the city had decided what it was. "His Grace is a gentle boy," said Mace on a breath that was half sigh. Cersei allowed herself a single blink that meant yes. She knew. She had given birth to him. "We will need to gird him. We will teach him," Cersei said, meaning she would. "And we will choose what the city thinks his gentleness means. A gentle king can be merciful. He can also be careful. He can be a listener, which is rarer than any other gift. Give the small folk bread this week and the chance to speak next week, and they will call him wise before he has had time to become so. Words move before men do. You should know this, my lord. You own 100 singers." Mace beamed. Varys's eyes, lidded, were bright with private amusement. Jaime leaned a little closer to her chair and said nothing, his warmth a quiet beside her. When the matter of Tyrion came up, as it had to, Pycelle made noises that meant death. Qyburn's silence was a little pool that reflected the ceiling. Varys dropped a thin hint about Dorne, as if it were a silk scarf someone had left by mistake. Tywin did not look at her when he said the wall. He looked at the table, but she felt the little shift in the room as if a fish had cut water quickly. Mace Tyrell's brows rose and fell as if they were strung on a harp. "Exile?" he said, cautious. "Sentence," Tywin said. "This is a clemency from the crown." He made the word crown sound like a weight that made a better paperweight than a hat. "And Oberyn?" said Jaime, his voice low, the single instance of him speaking in a council not about swords. "Oberyn likes a stage," Cersei said. She kept her voice a plain knife. "I will give him a garden and a promise that begs for witnesses. That will serve his appetite better than blood spilt so publicly it splashes Dorne. Let him see that we do not fear him. Men who think you fear them become fond of their shadows. Then they drown in them." "If your grace will allow," Varys said. "The prince is fond of truth stated in beautiful language. Truth without beauty is a blunt knife. Beauty without truth is a cough. He will prefer the knife that cuts clean." "You talk too much," Tywin said without particular malice, which was praise coming from him. "See to it." They dispersed as men do who have been told what they already suspected they would be told. After, Jaime walked with Cersei through a corridor where the wind had been coaxed in and made to behave like a courtesy. He looked at her with the level gaze he had kept since losing his hand, the one that said he was past nonsense and was still willing to tolerate it in others. "You surprised him," he said. "And you?" she said, watching the light glance off the fine lines at the edge of his mouth. "Did I surprise you? I have been trying to stop being surprised by you since we were 10, he said. "It has never worked." He hesitated. She felt the weight of the unspoken draw a little line in the air between them. "Tyrion will live," he said. "For a while," she answered. She tasted the iron in the back of her throat, and then it was gone. "If he dies by a knife in a dark alley, you'll know I did not send it. I do not waste knives on men I can control at a distance." He half smiled, then lost the smile. "He didn't do it, Cersei." She could have struck him then for the insult to her grief, but it would have been striking something in herself she was trying to force to grow straight. "No," she said softly. "Perhaps not with his hands. Perhaps not at all." She stopped. "We will never be certain, but our uncertainty matters less than Tommen's safety. I will not have trials that choke the throne room with theater. I will not watch men in bright cloaks kill each other to prove a point. It ends." She did not say, "And if you love me you will let it end," because love had emptied itself so often at that well that she could not bear to draw the bucket again and hear the dry scrape of its bottom. He looked at her, and there was a reluctance in him that was not shame and not pity but a third thing, the bagy ning of respect for a decision that cost both of them the coin they had most on hand. "All right," he said. "I will tell the jailers to keep the torches bright until he is gone. It makes men less hungry." He paused. "What did you do with your anger?" she considered. The honest answer was that it was sleeping at the foot of her bed like a faithful hound. I put it somewhere it can be of use, she said. I'll need it later. She touched his wrist just once and left the touch in the air like a warm knot. She met Marjorie in the gardens, as she had arranged. When the sun was modest and the shadows went long and slow across the crushed shell path. The gardeners had done as they always did and trained the roses to climb things that did not belong to them until they looked as if they did. Marjorie moved through them in a dress the color of a late peach. There had been talk of black. Cersei was pleased to see the girl had chosen something more cunning. Black would have made the small folk weep, and their tears would have been for the girl and not for the boy. The peach said, "Life is still obliged to ripen." They walked without touching arms. Marjorie spoke first, as she always did, because she preferred to show courage before she needed it. "I am sorry," she said, "a word too small for the thing, but the word I have." "We are both women," Cersei said. It was almost an apology. "We know the words the world gives us are small-sized. Tommen will be king very soon. You will be his comfort. He will be yours." She moved her hand and watched a bee correct its flight. "I will not stand between you." Marjorie was ready to disbelieve kindness and so did not waste time deciding whether it was true. She took the phrase and turned it gently. "I wish to stand beside him, not between him and what teaches him. You are his mother. You know his humors. I was a wife for a day and did not meet him at all in that time." Cersei inclined her head, letting herself appreciate the clean line of that sentence. A girl raised by Olenna Tyrell did not waste syllables when there was meat to carve in front of her. "We will teach him together," she said, and tasted the strangeness of we like someone tasting a new fruit at court, suspicious and delighted. "The city will see us together. You will give it music and I will give it quiet. Between, Tommen will be able to breathe." "Queen Regent," Marjorie said, the title a little bit of sugar that did not melt quickly on the tongue. "Crown Princess," Cersei answered, returning her own flavor. "There will be days when you wish to rule. Choose the days carefully. I will choose some for you. We will not choose the same days if we can help it." She stopped beside a bench that had warmed enough to be forgiving. A gardener's boy watched them from a respectful distance, his mouth open in a way old men often copied for tears. "There will be bread in the city on the day of the funeral," she said. "It will be placed in Tommen's hands first. You will help him give it away." Marjorie smiled fully then, the expression she had reserved at Joffrey's wedding for old lords and very young girls. "He will like that," she said. "He likes to be liked. Do not make him a child of applause." Cersei lifted a leaf that had fallen before its time and rolled it between finger and thumb until memory made it whole again. "Make him a man who can hear when someone says the wrong thing and not answer it, and know that not answering is an answer. I can keep blades off him for a time. Cannot keep all eyes off him. You can teach him not to bleed for them." "So serious a conversation," said a voice cane dry, pleasant as shade. Olenna Tyrell's chair rolled forward by a girl with a braid thick as a rope. "When you see two young women in a garden together speaking in low voices, you may be sure they are dividing the world between them. I hope you leave a corner for old women to nap in." She looked at Cersei with eyes that had never been fooled by lace. "Your Grace." She dipped a little curtsy that acknowledged the queen and the mother and forgave both for existing. "You look very well for a woman who has lost so much." "I have not had time to fall apart," Cersei said. She kept her tone courteous and unyielding. "Have you ever trusted a woman who takes leisure in grief?" "Never," said Olenna. "I do not trust leisure in anyone. It rots more quickly than meat." She turned her head to the roses. "I have always liked this garden. It is honest about how much work it takes to make it look as if it does not take any work at all. That is how a city should be." "The Reach knows something about that," Cersei said, "and my father knows the rest. Between, we should keep everything alive." Olenna's mouth made a small movement that on another person might have been a smile. "Between," she said, and the word carried 1,000 meanings, a little caravan of implication trundling along after it. She looked at Marjorie and then at Cersei. If I live long enough to be bored, she said, I will congratulate you both on some success. She tapped her cane on the path once. Until then, feed your city. Tends to bite. My little rose does not need to be bit while she learns to prune. I have arranged bread, Cersei said. And songs, Marjorie added, quick and light. Songs are bread for people who already ate, Olenna said, as if the remark were a kindness. But they keep the teeth occupied. Very good. Cersei did not watch the old woman too closely when she said it, which was her own little victory, because she wanted very much to lean into every micro-expression on that wrinkled face and see if the crime was written there. She suspected everything and accused nothing. There would be time to examine the lace of a hairnet. There would be time for 100 little questions asked by someone who did not appear to be asking questions at all. But not today. Today she built something people could point to and call a house. The sun slid a little downward in the sky and showed its soft belly. When she left the garden, she stood a moment in a corridor that caught a draft smelling faintly of yeast and ash. Bread in the ovens. The city's private geography. She found she could breathe more easily knowing that loaves would reach hands that did not string rosaries with pearls. In the evening, she went down to the cells. Jaime had sent word. The torches were mostly new, fat with tallow, and they did what fire does when promised a good meal. They ate the darkness to a thickness that allowed men to walk. She stood before the bars and watched Tyrion look up from where he sat cross-legged on the little pallet like a schoolboy being instructed in penance. Cersei, he said. It was half greeting, half. She did not know what else. A warning, perhaps. Perhaps only the name of a forest one ought not to walk into after dark. You will take the black, she said. She wanted the words to strike. It was difficult to throw words like stones when one was speaking to blood. You will go quietly. You will write to our uncles. You will write to no one else. If a singer tries to buy your story, sell him nothing. If you laugh at this, I will send rats to your cell that have been taught to prefer noses to grain. He had to smile at that. His eyes were bruised around the edges with lack of sleep or too much of it. Rats who prefer noses are better courtiers than most. Why offer me this kindness? She let the candlelight have her face because it would make it less soft. This is not kindness, she said. Do you know what my face looks like when I do kindness? No, I can't remember either. This is strategy. You will be more useful to me far away and alive than dead where your shape would be cut into banners. You assume I will be persuaded to serve the sister who wishes me gone. I do not care if you serve me, she said. I care that you do not trouble the boy I love. There is nothing in this world I will not eat to keep him from famine. Your bones crunch the same as any other man's. He looked up at the stone above her head as if there might be something written there he had missed. Tommen, he said. He said it very gently, and then with an attempt at humor that did not quite lift. And what of the man who sits in the room with a crossbow when a dwarf is condemned? You will not have an audience for a quip tonight, she said evenly. I know what you are trying to do. You wish to place our father between us and see which of us chooses the shorter spear. I am not playing with spears. I am counting loaves. The city will eat tomorrow because I told it to. You will live because I can afford to let you. One day, perhaps, I cannot. On that day, you may find the wit you love so well desert you and leave you with the plain dumbness of terror. It happens to men. He tilted his head, fascinated despite himself. You have changed, he said. I have not, she answered. It came too quickly to be absolutely true. I have only put my anger where it casts a longer shadow. She stepped closer to the bars and lowered her voice, because men cannot resist leaning forward when a voice lowers. Hear me, Tyrion. If you did this thing, the poison and the cup and all of it, I will find you in black and drag your soul off the wall and use it to makeshift my hearth. If you did not, it matters even more that you go now. I have no interest in seeing justice performed in a hall full of vipers. He sat with it. He had one of those faces that could be a mirror without seeming weak. She could watch him consider and think herself smarter for it. Finally he said, Very well. I have always wanted to visit the coldest end of the world. I hear it is honest. The south is too warm. It melts sin until it runs and stains the carpets. He smiled a little, and the smile was not unkind. We were little once, he said. And you used to tell me that you were going to marry me, and I told you that was not how it worked, and you told me you would make it work. I believed you. She remembered the threads of sunlight in the corridors of Casterly Rock and how they made dust look like gold. I was a child, she said. I no longer think I can make everything work, only enough. Go to the wall. Do not write your jokes to me from it. If you live, send word that you live. Nothing more. He rose, surprising her with the dignity of it. Tell Jaime no, he said, stopping himself. Some decision made inside his chest that she did not wish to examine. No, he bowed to her slightly, absurd and perfect. Your Grace. When she returned to her chamber, the city's noises had changed. Fewer wheels, more feet. Fewer hungry dogs, more men closing shutters against the dark and trusting that the morning would come as mornings mostly do. Tommen woke when she looked in, as children do when the person who loves them stands near. He blinked, his hair a chaos, his face soft with sleep's damp. Ser Pounce chirruped. Annoyed. Mother, Tommen said. The word broke her into 1,000 pieces and put her together again out of order, better and worse. She sat on his bed and smoothed his hair with the careful gentleness of a person handling a crown. You will be king very soon, she said. She spoke as one might to someone about to take a journey. It will feel like a game that is too big for you at first. That feeling does not go away. You learn to walk anyway. When men shout, you need not shout back. You need not answer every question. A king who answers every question is a lantern. Men use him to find their own way. She bent and kissed the cool place at his temple where no hair grew yet. You will have a wife soon. She is kind to cats. That is more than you can say of most kings. He smiled, sleepy. I like cats, he said. I know, she said. It is one of the best things about you. She did not tell him that it might also be a dangerous thing, this softness. She would teach him which rooms in his RT were safe to keep open and which required shutting when storms came. I wish Joff was here, he murmured. And then the word was out of his mouth and he heard it and gnawed his lip as if he had done a wrong thing. She held his hand and did not let him see any part of her that would break him. So do I, she said. We will say prayers for him in the morning. Sleep now. Kings must be tall in the eyes of others, and sleep helps with that. He closed his eyes, child docile to instruction and to love. Cersei sat until his breathing smoothed and deepened. She left the door open a hand's breadth so the cat could come and go as it pleased. Freedom was the one thing she trusted children to keep tender for themselves. When she was alone, she stood again at the window and watched the city in its many small lives. She pulled her anger out from under the bed where she kept her dragons and looked at it, weighing it as a woman might weigh a piece of jewelry she was not ready to wear. It was still hers. It was still hot. It would feed a dozen future evenings. She put it away again and took up a different thing, a patience that felt alien at first, like a cloak made for someone broader of shoulder. She decided she would grow to fill it. She had done harder things with worse cloth. At dawn, they put on black. The bells were rung not too loud, not too long. The small folk, in their thousands, came like the tide, and she watched the wave break against the steps of the sept and watched the faces lift like open hands. She watched Marjorie put her fingers over Tommen's where he held the first loaf and guide his hands so he did not leave fingerprints in the soft crumb. She watched the way the city watched this girl and this boy and decided to be pleased. She watched the way her father guided men with the distinct motion of someone who does not wish to be seen to be guiding anyone at all. She watched the Dornishmen. There were fewer now that the stories of poison had turned ugly. Stand together under orange cloth and not spit. She watched the breath of the city change pitch, as if a fever had taken a half-degree drop and no one dared say the word healthy aloud. She watched Oberyn Martell watch her. He came to the arranged meeting without attendance, and the garden was as empty as a new page. He walked as if there were chords in the air and his fingers could find them. He bowed without mockery and said, "Your Grace," with a mouth that had tested the phrase and found it to his liking. Prince, she said. She had never held with honorifics for men who could not be trusted to keep the blade of their wit sheathed. He did her the courtesy of acknowledging the discourtesy and letting it pass. They walked. The roses were quieter in the morning, their scents less insistent, their petals cool with dew that had not yet decided to evaporate. Oberyn's eyes were the color of something warm and suspect, and they looked at her in a way that did not reduce her even when it measured her. "I came to this city to see justice," he said. "I thought I knew what the shape of it would be." He smiled in a way that meant he had already begun to enjoy being wrong. "Every time I think I have a map of this place, someone turns the paper upside down." "You will have your justice," Cersei said. She kept her voice clean. "Not the spectacle. The spectacle would be a lie anyway. Theater is a kindness we give to those who cannot bear truth. I believe you do not need kindness. I will not insult you with it." She paused. "Gregor Clegane will be examined by men who have not been paid to be blind. If he dies of a fever before they are finished, you will have no reason to doubt that fever was the one thing in this city not arranged to please anyone." "And your brother?" "He goes north," she said. "It is very far, farther than most murders travel." Oberyn laughed, a peel like a piece of fruit being cut. "You are very practical for a woman with so many silk dresses," he said. "I did not expect to like you. You need not like me to leave my gardens without starting a war," she said. "I need not like you to give you what you are owed." "Is that what you think justice is?" he asked, amused. "A ledger entry under the column of owed? It is the only version men keep paying attention to," she said. "I do not trust their attention for long. While it lasts, I will use it. Then I will use their fear. Then, when they forget their fear, I will use their appetite. I have made my peace with the instruments I have." "Peace?" he repeated, and looked at her as if she had handed him a knife and dared him to test its edge. "You say that word as if it were more than the thing men mention between battles to catch their breath." "It will be as much as we make of it," she said. "I will not burn the reach to spite a girl I do not like. I will not throw my brother to the dogs to quiet a city that only knows how to bark. I will not arm the faith to use their swords against my enemies, because I have no interest in teaching old men to swing steel in halls I plan to keep in the family." She looked at him. "You have daughters." He looked back, and for a moment the prince vanished and the father stood where he had been. "Ido. Then you know what I mean when I say I will not live in a world that is on fire if I can help it." "And yet," he said after a moment, "you enjoy the heat." "I do not deny what I am," she said. "I have simply learned that if a fire eats everything, there is nothing left worth warming one's hands at." He considered. He was a man who enjoyed difficulty the way some men enjoyed wine. He rolled it on his tongue. "I will accept this bargain," he said, although she had not offered one in that form. "I will save my anger for a later meal. If you lie to me, I will know." "If I lie to you," she said, "you will not be the first to notice." He bowed, less mockery now than before. "When they write the songs," he said, "they will not know how to make you beautiful and honest at the same time. I am interested to see which flaw they choose." "I will not be in their songs," she said, and turned away, because she had other business. At sunset, 1,000 little lamps were lit across the city, and the smell of bread that had been eaten settled into the alleys, a happiness fragile as dust. She stood on the balcony that looked toward the river and listened. She could hear, barely, the creak of the wheelhouses on the fountains, and the deeper groan of ships as they took the day's light into their hulls and made it into tomorrow's motion. Behind her, the room gave off the smell of beeswax and parchment and the dry satisfaction of things accomplished, and a fine new thread of something unfamiliar that tugged at the edge of her attention until she turned and found it. Patience, she realized, had a scent after all. It smelled like the instant before a match takes flame, all sulfur and promise, without yet the light to see by. She stood in it, breathing deeply, and told herself over and over again in the old child's whisper that precedes any vow strong enough to bend a life, "Do not waste the fire."